What up, y'all? It's Deb. Mtg, we like it a magic. That's right, a second couch video in the same week. It's starting to feel like the good old days, y'all. But today, we're going to talk about something really interesting, at least in my opinion. Now, rotation is coming up, and we haven't really talked too much about it yet on the channel, but it's only a couple of months away now. And look, I know you're not going to catch too many people saying this. It's not the most popular opinion, but I kind of love rotation. It's one of my favorite parts about being a standard player. Fresh cards, out with the old, in with the new, and you don't have to worry about dealing with those same old frustrating cards you've dealt with a million times before. Except, of course, for the ones that you do have to worry about dealing with still. And that's what this video is going to be about today. We're going to talk about the 10 cards that are going to be the scourges of standard once rotation hits. But it's an Mtg top 10. It's one of mine. So you know we're going to actually talk about like 20 cards today. So buckle in, get yourself something cold to drink. It's going to be a fun one. Let's talk about 10 cards you're going to hate by this time next year.
I'm sorting through some heinous haters like a pooper scooper. I'm just trying to take my life like a Koopa Trooper. I'm Double Mario. That means I'm super. And I'm freaking dangerous like a Chupa Cabra.
We're back from the intro. Good wrappings there. Now, you might expect me to just launch directly into an honorable mention, because that's how I do videos. We're going to try to do things a little differently this time, because you have to experiment sometimes. You got to branch out and do things differently than you do them occasionally. Sometimes you got to do that. You got to try. And so this time, we're going to do honorable mentions. Don't worry. But we're going to do them before the number 1 entry. And that's because I still have some cards I want to talk about before we get to the actual list here. But they're not honorable mentions. They're kind of dishonorable mentions. Let's talk very quickly about 3 cards that I think might not be as good as you think they might be after rotation. Now, the first of these is a powerful Planeswalker that remains undeniably strong after rotation, but without a Seeker's Chariot around to copy its tokens, I don't think Wrenn 7 sees anywhere near the level of play that it's enjoyed over the last year or so here. Now, the play level of this card has dropped off significantly in the last few months, but especially once the Cadillac rotates, you never have to worry about that card again. I'm pretty sure that Wrenn 7 is going to drop off and play even more. Now, I say all that, but I'll also hedge my bets here a bit and say that if the format remains pretty mid-range like it is now, and if Planeswalkers continue to matter, and there's also the fact that other powerful 5-mana Planeswalkers like Lolth will rotate out of the format, and maybe this can fill that space a little bit. There's reasons this might see some play, but really, Cat-Car plus Wrenn 7 is one of the best green things you can do in Standard right now. So without that 1-2 punch, I just think that Wrenn 7 gets a little bit sadder. Also want to briefly bring up Rafine in this section. Really good card right now, but we do lose pathways after rotation. Now, they might get replaced by something even better. Shocks or maybe even fetches might be better than pathways. So I would like to see that, but if we don't get one of those like kind of very specific dual lands, or an even better dual land that we've like never seen before, then I'm pretty sure the loss of pathways is going to make playing these like 3-color creatures that you kind of need to play on curve a whole lot worse. So I'm just not too sure about Rafine. I think that there's probably still like an Esper Planeswalker shell with Emperor and Kaito and some other cards we'll talk about today, but I still am not too sure that that shell definitely includes like the 4 copies of Rafine that it now includes if this card gets way harder to cast. And finally, in a similar vein, but a card that I think gets hit even harder than Rafine, is Hinata Dawn Crown. Now, again, we lose the pathways, and this doesn't have a Triome the way Rafine does to help you cast it, right? So this doesn't, you don't even get that with this. And you lose Goldspan Dragon to help play off this, and even, maybe even more importantly, you lose Magma Opus to play with this. So is Hinata going to be anywhere near as good in the new format without all of the usual tricks that you see around this card? It makes it one of the best cards in the format. I'm not sure that it's still going to be one of the best cards in the format come the fall once it loses all of its best friends. Hope that was quick enough. Let's get to the actual list right now. I'm hoping that we're less than 3 minutes in. Did I make it? Let me know. But anyway, number 10, everybody. Again, it feels very weird to skip honorable mentions, but number 10, this is kind of like an honorable mention for the list. I don't know how many times in my YouTube career I've said that, but number 10 is kind of one of those cards that doesn't have to be like a format-defining all-star. I just think it's a card that's going to be even more important than it is now come the fall, and that is Helena and Elena. Did I say their name right? I feel like I never get their name right. Helena and Elena. Helena and Elana? I always misspell this card. Every time it's in a deck list, and I have to like input the deck list in the TCG player or Ether Hub or whatever I'm doing, I always misspell this card 3 times until I give up and look it up. So I'm sorry about that. But I do like calling it Helena and Elena. And I think that Helena and Elena might be one of the better creatures in the upcoming format. We lose Luminarch Aspirant, which I'll probably bring up multiple times in this video, but that's a big one to lose. And this is kind of a makeshift Luminarch Aspirant. It puts multiple cards on a creature per turn, or counters on a creature per turn. Gives the creature haste. I think that matters an awful lot too. It has a couple of keyword abilities that matter. So I just really like Helana and Elena, and it's actually already a kind of important card. And I think that in a smaller format, a smaller pond, it can be a much, much bigger fish. This card is already proven to be really good, and I can't imagine it gets worse come fall. At number 9, another green creature, and kind of another, I won't necessarily call this a spicy pick, but there's going to be way more powerful cards starting at number 8, I think. So, in my last kind of goof pick, but still, nonetheless, a card that I think is already powerful and is going to become far more powerful once autumn rolls around is Gala Greeters. This card is already, again, very good in a number of different like tokens builds or just like straight up creatures builds, the green-white sort of aggro-y, mid-rangey builds, you know. Again, lots of different builds are playing Gala Greeters right now. It's for a reason. It's a super good card. You know, there's too many amazing things about this thing. Regardless of what you need in a game, it's going to give you that thing. Whether it's ramp in the early game, a big dude as the game goes on. Again, kind of Luminarch Aspirant vibes if you can play a creature or two every turn. And then, again, if you're trying to race against something, gives you some life. So just a lot of great things about Gala Greeters. There's so much value on this 2-drop that, again, if the format stays kind of mid-rangey and we're looking to build a board state, get value off of the creatures we play early, then Gala Greeters is obviously kind of one of the better cards in the entire format. And look, we're rolling into a format where I think there's some very, very notable 2-drops that I think set up a number of different archetypes, but Gala Greeters is definitely one of those. Is it as good as some of the other cards we'll talk about a little bit later on the list? I'm not too sure, but at the same time, I think this is going to be the prototypical 2-drop for a number of archetypes in the new standard once that happens. We're going to switch gears for number 8. We've had a couple of green creatures on the list so far, but I guess you can't go too much farther left of that than just talk about Memory Deluge for a while. And this, again, I think is where we start getting into some extremely powerful cards. Memory Deluge is probably the best way, in blue decks at least, of getting real card advantage. And of course that depends. I think there's still reasons to play, say, Is It? After the format rotates, and in Is It, you might decide to play a card like Big Score over a card like Memory Deluge if you want the ramp. And with cards like Hullbreaker Horror in the format, you might still want the ramp. So I could see this card not seeing all the play in the world. But that said, I think it again is still going to be basically the most powerful way of gaining card advantage, especially for decks that want to play straight up control. And even if there's not a whole lot of those decks, I still think Memory Deluge sees a lot of play as the premier card advantage piece in this format. Now, number 7 is Titan of Industry. Still a pretty young card in this format, a bit of a teen Titan. Still jolly and green, but soon it's going to be a seasoned veteran, everybody. Look, this card's going to keep seeing play. There's a reason this gets like jammed into everything. There are like blue-red decks now that are effectively teamer, and they just play Titan of Industry at the top end. There are Jund decks that only play like one green card. It's Titan of Industry. There are a lot of decks that literally play just Titan of Industry. I've seen multiple like Olivia Grixis Reanimator decks that have winning records in multiple events so far this season. It's actually a nice, spicy little deck if you want to check it out. Maybe I'll do that one on stream soon. But there are multiple Olivia decks that are Grixis decks that don't play a single green source that nonetheless play 2 to 3 Titan of Industry as a reanimation target. I mean, there's just so many decks right now that just literally, if you're looking up the word in the MTG glossary of terms, if you want to know what jam means, what does it mean to jam a card? You look it up in the MTG dictionary, a picture of Titan of Industry. It's just instantly the best ramp payoff in the format, and there's still plenty of ramp going around. There's a couple of ramp cards we'll talk about as we get farther along in this video. So there's still plenty of effective ramp rolling around. It's still really good with Fable the Mirror Breaker. You know, it's still really good to reanimate. There's plenty of good reanimation spells after rotation. So I just don't see Titan going anywhere, and I had to really restrict myself from making this card number 1 because it could easily be. Now, if you're going to be playing Reanimator, pals, you got to put cards in the graveyard somehow. And even though that's not the only thing this card does, I think Kaito Shizuki is probably the best card at doing that post-rotation. So he's my number 6 because this does a whole bunch of other stuff besides just milkshaking. and bringing your boys to the yard. Now, this also just straight up draws cards if you're in kind of an aggro-y type deck. Drawing cards is great, making creatures is great. Phasing out to make sure that it doesn't die the first turn it's in play is ridiculous. Man, I kind of love that more Planeswalkers don't do that because it's really annoying playing against it and very satisfying playing with it. Just a great little 3-mana walker here that's virtually guaranteed to stick around until the next turn and get you some value regardless. So just a great little walker that's shown up in multiple kinds of decks, whether it's Esper midrange, Esper aggro, Esper control, Grixis decks. It shows up in the Grixis Vampires deck. This will randomly show up in sometimes. Multiple Reanimator builds. There's too many things, especially that survive rotation, like literally every deck I just named, for this not to show up all the time. Now, smack dab in the middle of the list right here, I want to bring up something that might depress some people. Sorry about that, but at number 5, I couldn't pick one card for this entry, so I'm just gonna say mono white cards. The mono white deck, like I've already brought up that we lose Lumi, and that's gonna be a massive loss for these mono white decks. Really gonna hurt their ability to like go long. Right, like Luminarch Aspirin is a special creature. It might be the best white 2-drop in Standard in a decade. It's a really powerful card. You can't discount it at all. But I will say that just about everything else doesn't rotate in the mono white aggro deck. Thalia, maybe the other best white 2-drop in the last 20 years. That one sticks around. Really good card there. And even though we lose Elite Spellbinder and Skyclave Apparition in 3-drop slot, we get to keep Adeline. It's a very good 3-drop, and we get to keep Brutal Cathar, a very good 3-drop. Even in the 1-drop slot, you get Hopeful Initiate, right? So this deck actually does not lose that much. It still gets its adversary, So just, I'm pretty sure this deck's still live. So don't think just because rotation, I'll never have to play against mono white again. Yeah, you probably will. You probably will, which is probably why it's a good idea to remember number 4. Sweepers. But I'll just, I think I can put one face on this, and that's the Meat Hook Massacre. Burn Down the House is still in the format. There's still sweepers. Depopulate, it's actually not the worst sweeper in the world. This is probably the single best, or at least the most played sweeper in the environment. And I don't think that's going to change at all, and it's going to make it really difficult to play small-ish creature decks in this environment. Again, especially without Luminarch Aspirant buffing your creatures every turn, getting one of your dudes above a Meat Hook Massacre or whatever, the card's going to be even better. But that said, if there's just no aggro in the format, right, if Luminarch Aspirant rotates, and we get to a point where it's not worth it to play aggro, no one's playing aggro, we're all playing mid-range, then I could feasibly see the Meat Hook Massacre taking a little bit of a hit. To be honest, it doesn't really kill stuff like Titan of Industry too easily. So I could see this card taking a hit, but I imagine it's still going to be one of the best sweepers in the format. And even in a mid-range format, sweepers are still very, very important. So I wouldn't expect this to see too much less play than it's currently seeing, which is all of the play. But what's, oh wow, number 3. We're already at number 3. Honestly, numbers 3 through 1 were really tough to order because I think that any of these cards could feasibly be number 1. But I thought Titan of Industry could be number 1 too, so let's keep that in mind. But number 3, what I've got written down here, and again, keep in mind, this could be 2 or 1 for all I know. But I think all 3 of these cards have a good chance. Devin, shut up. Number 3 is Obnic Silas. I'm just going to say it. I know that this card wasn't a massive force in the format, the way we all kind of expected it to be, or a lot of us expected it to be, once the format started. Although Obnic Silas does see a good amount of play, right? It's in the Only Cold Anvil deck. It's just in the red-black deck, the Vampires deck. Some people play in the Grixis Vampires deck. It's often in the Jund deck with the Seeker's Chariot, because Chariot can copy Obnic Silas. Obviously won't have that trick anymore in the upcoming format, but I still think that Obnic Silas is going to shine a lot more in a smaller pawn than he does in an 8-set standard. So, and he was born into an 8-set standard. Once we go down to a 5-set standard, and again, this is a much bigger fish in a smaller pond, and he's still going to have, Bloodtithe Harvester and Tenacious Underdog and these other incredible 2-drops. I said we were going to talk about more 2-drops way back at Gala Greeters, and here we are. I think with 2-drops like Bloodtithe Harvester and Tenacious Underdog also being some of the best cards in the format after rotation. I mean, they're already some of the best cards in the format right now. Again, I don't really expect that to change. If we lose Pathways, Harvester gets a little worse. I was going to curse on YouTube. Well, Harvester gets a little worse without Pathways, but not that much worse. You can still cast this on turn 2, right? So I don't know. I think that Obnixilis still has the tools. It really doesn't lose too much to be a very important card in the upcoming format. Is it going to be Oko? No, it's never going to be Oko. It's never going to be Oko. But at the same time, I do think that this card might finally really come into its own after rotation. Number 2 is Fable of the Mirror Breaker, for kind of a lot of the same reasons I've just listed off with Obnixilis. Right? Blood-Tithe Harvester is still in the format. It's a really good copy. Titan of Industry, still in the format. That's a great copy. We've got so many things that we want to copy in the upcoming format. Just as many as we have right now, it seems, right? And this is still going to be decent ramp. It's still, just the bones of the card. I want to stress this. The bones of this card are incredible. 3 mana for 4/4 in stats on 2 guys, one of which ramps you, and the other one wins the game. And also, I haven't even talked about this. Filtering, which is good a lot too. This is great in Reanimator decks. It's great just to, fix your garbage hand that Arena gave you at the beginning of the game. So I really don't discount that second chapter. It's there and it matters. So I don't see this card going anywhere. It's just going to be on its face in a vacuum, one of the most powerful cards in Standard, and it's still, even outside of that vacuum, got plenty of synergy, even without knowing what's in Dominaria United, but what's in Dominaria United can only help this card. So I just don't think Fable loses much, and while it's in Standard, you're pretty much always going to have a reason to play it. Alright, so as promised, right before we hit number 1, we're going to talk honorable mentions for just a second, and I don't have too many of these. I really only have one, but I did have a decision, right? Like, do I talk about stuff that I think might not quite be good enough, which is what I did at the top of the video, but I still think deserves an honorable mention, right? Stuff like maybe Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. Is this card still going to be good without all the amazing Izzet stuff in the format? Like, I'm not too sure, but it's probably still at least worth a look. Lear is going to be a powerful card, pretty much no matter what, but I thought it was boring. Same thing goes with like Hullbreaker Horror. I'm not even sure that this is going to see all the play in the world with Titan of Industry in the format. Titan of Industry has already proven itself to be the better 7-mana creature. If you're going to pay 7 mana for a creature, it's usually Titan of Industry. The play on Hullbreaker Horror is tapered off a good bit, but again, if there's a dedicated control deck in the format, this is definitely the finisher, so you got to remember, Hullbreaker is still in the format. It's still a scourge, but I decided I wanted to use this slot for something a little bit spicier, maybe a card that's good, a card that's shown up in list here or there, winning list for that matter, but hasn't really broken through ever, but I think might have a chance to do just that after rotation, and that, a lot of talk to get to this point, is Olivia, Crimson Bride. Again, I kind of spoiled this a little earlier, but there are multiple decks over the last 2 months in Standard that have had winning records with 4 color versions of this deck, and I think that, again, this deck just gets better after rotation. We still got these amazing reanimation targets, like, Lord Xander, Jin-Gitaxias, Hullbreaker Horror, Titan of Industry. Your reanimation targets don't really go anywhere. You don't really lose any good reanimation targets. Before you know it, if you're reanimating your Olivia, that's reanimating a Titan of Industry. The Titan's putting a shield counter on your Olivia. You're just having a great time. So I still think Olivia might have a chance in the upcoming format, especially if you get some really good reanimator stuff. We'll have to wait and see. Number 1, ladies and gentlemen, I imagine you've all guessed it at this point because I haven't brought the card up at all. Awfully conspicuous in her absence is the Wandering Emperor, isn't she? It's because I saved her till last. I mean, it's not quite the feeling of Settle the Wreckage. I sometimes have flashbacks to swinging into 4 open mana just a few years ago and knowing I was going to get hit by Settle the Wreckage. It's not a good feeling, but that feeling lives on today in the Wandering Emperor. What is more obvious than your opponent playing their 4th mana, their 2nd white source, mind you, and saying go in their deck that wants to advance the board state? There's not much more obvious than that, but even though it's obvious, the Wandering Emperor will still come down, hit you during that attack step you have to take because you want to win the game, and just completely turn the tide of battle. I think this is probably the best turn the corner card in all of Standard, and whether it's in, a kind of traditional control deck, or maybe it's in a hybrid control mid-range deck like the Esper Planeswalkers deck, or maybe it's just in a pure mid-range deck like these green-white decks, green-white X that we see popping up in the format, the Wandering Emperor will always have a home somewhere, even if it's just in mono white. That's still going to be a deck, and this is a pretty good 4-drop that already sees play in mono white. Whether it's just the mode on it that allows you to get rid of that guy forever and I never have to see him again, and I gain life, and now I have a Planeswalker on the field. That's a really powerful mode. Or it's just make 2/2s and pump them. No matter what you're doing with the card, you're getting ahead on board, you're pressuring the opponent, you're pressuring your control opponent, right? You're putting blockers on the field against big guys, you're getting rid of the biggest dude on their side of the table, they ramp to their Titan of Industry, and you don't care because you have a Wandering Emperor. The card just answers so many things in the format, and it's always got something to do, even if your opponent's not providing an attacker for it to eat. So I think that the Wandering Emperor might be one of the best, if not the best. It's definitely in the top 3 cards in Standard right this moment. And again, I'm pretty sure after rotation, almost no matter what's in Dominaria United, this will remain in the top 3 cards in Standard. And again, potentially be the best. So that was my number 1, just in case you were wandering. Now that's my list, but let me know what cards I may have missed here that I didn't. I tried to bring up all the cards that I could, but I'm sure there's a couple of things that you guys think are going to be the best cards in Standard. I totally missed them in this video. So let me know down there in the comments section how you feel about it and what cards you would have put on your list. But aside from that, still YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. If you haven't done them yet, be nice to do. Likes are free. That'd be great. Patreon is not free, but it's just $1 a month. Helps support the channel, and you get to vote on what content we do around here. Oddly enough, the patrons did not vote for this video, but they voted for the last video we did, and this is the idea that came in second on that poll. So we did the idea they wanted to do the most first, and then we did the idea they wanted to do second. And right now there's a Patreon poll that I think was tied 3 ways the last time I looked. So it's a pretty hotly contested Patreon poll. $1 a month, patreon.com/SBMTG, or link in the description. Go to there, really helps out. Aside from that, what else? Twitch. I play Magic on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SBMTGdev. Should be switching. I wish I was playing some Switch. I've been playing Spiritfarer. Very good game, highly recommend. But I should be twitching tomorrow night. Actually, the day I put this video out, later on that day, I'll be playing Magic on Twitch. So check me out over there. Self-promotion is hard. I'm very bad at it. But anyway, I think that's all the self-promotion I have to do. I made it. We got out of that on the other side together. You're still here, right? And most of you clicked away. But if you're still here, thanks. It really means a lot to me. But just let me know how you felt about this stuff. And I'll be back at you with another video from the couch later on this week. 3 videos from the couch in 1 week. It's unbelievable. We're doing it, guys. Together. We're doing it. Thanks for your support. It means a lot. But that's all I got for this one. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.